Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're going to pick up where we left off last week. We got the 35 pickup bed epoxy primed. We have the camera lady's hood and grill shell epoxy primed and headlight buckets. What I really want to do is move some of this stuff forward. I'm going to go over the epoxy primer. I'm going to look for any imperfections into it and decide whether or not I'm going to go with a high build on the whole thing and resand it all, or do some high build primer and touch-ups, or if it's just good enough, we might just go straight to using some putty, because basically our stuff is all brand new sheet metal. Very, very little stuff that we did to it. So once I get into the right light here, we'll see what I have to do. And then I don't know if we'll get it painted this week, but we're definitely going to get that stuff painted within the next 2 weeks, just to get it done and out of the way with. Also on the camera lady's Roadster, one thing I have to do is start getting the headers off to get them recoated. Like I said in the previous episode, we got it started up, but we came across a couple issues. I had to order a new water pump. We've got to put a new plate on the old vent that goes on the bottom of the block. Just a few more things like that. Anyways, I can also start working on the 5-window coupe and chopping some stuff. But like I said, the primary focus will be to move the grill shell and the hood as far along as we can up to getting it painted. But like I said, I think it'll be the following episode the actual paint gets on it, because of the availability of the gentleman that Jesse, who painted the body. He told us that he would come back and he would paint this stuff for us. I can paint it. He just does a better job because he's a full-time painter, so I'm going to let him do it. Anyways, follow along. We're going to be working on the 32 Fords and maybe something on the 35 pickup bed. So it's next day after the cleanup of the epoxy prime. Just kind of going over all the pieces to see if there's anything I have to fix. In some cases, it's just minor little picks. I did have one little run here. I've got to sand that out. Got a couple little pieces of fuzz I've got to sand out of the finish, but essentially I think for the hood and the hood sides, it's basically we're just going to sand it with 320 and then basically then seal and paint it. Everything is good. I'm happy with everything on it. It was brand new sheet metal, so I really shouldn't have expected too much of a problem. So that's a go on that. Now on the grill shell, I did mention that it was a Brookfield second. I do have somewhat of a little blemish dimple. I don't know if you can see it there or not. Gonna have to go over that with some spot putty. And then I've got two little nicks in the metal down here. Again, it's just gonna be spot putty on that. And then sand with 320 and get it ready for paint. The limitation here is, I guess, we'll get this ready. Again, I'm not sure if we're going to paint it this week or not. It depends on Jesse's availability. Anyways, it's going to be done. We're going to get everything done here on the grill shell and the hood within the next 2 weeks for sure. We're back in the shop today. Lots to do, as I said at the beginning of the video, as far as getting the parts ready to paint for the camera lady's Roadster. A few things to do on the Roadster. Also some body work to do on the 35 pickup box. One thing the owner of the 35 pickup has asked me to do, he has these plates that go somewheres on the top of the inside of the cab. I think they're above, up where the headliner is, but I'm really not 100% sure. Anyways, either he can't buy them or they're too expensive to get them. I'm not really sure what the case is, or maybe they don't make them. Don't really know. Anyways, what he's asked me to do is see if I can't make a panel like this. Now, it's relatively straightforward. It's pretty thin metal without being rusted. It's like 20 or 22 gauge, so it's not really all that going to be all that hard to form. A couple things is that there's a bead all the way around, which is smaller than most of the standard beads. Very tight corners. There's a recess section here that's pressed up, but then countersunk. The holes in the center, not worried about those whatsoever. What I've done so far, I've messed around with the bead roller. I've tried most of the beads that I had, And what I come up with was I've got a hemming die, which actually will roll beads. Now I've split this in the past for different reasons, for adjustments and everything else, but when I put them both back on there and then use this section here, if I apply 3 turns to it, I actually can get a fairly good representative bead. So what I'm going to do, this is the plan of how I'm going to try to make this. It may be that it doesn't turn out, but I think I can get this. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll the beads all the way around and meet in the corner. And then what I'm planning to do is make like a punch to form the round section. Now, you might ask, why did I make this too big? Well, I don't want to make it like really thin like on this corner here, because when I go to form the bead, I might get too much of deflection. I would rather form this in the center of the panel and then trim away what I don't use in the end. So it looks as though using that hemming die as a bead, I can roll these little fine lines here all around the corner. Now, like I said, I've just got these have a nice little rounded edge here, so we're going to have to make something, make a female portion, a piece of metal, and I'll make a male portion that I can pound in and make these nice rounded corners. Haven't figured that out yet, but as soon as I do, I'm going to show you. And then also the second thing we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to do the same thing here, make a small female section on the bottom, and then we'll pound in this particular shape. Once we pound that shape in, ideally flip it over and then use like another form to actually put the chamfer back into it. So anyways, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to make up a bunch of these basically for sacrificial pieces. I'll probably make 6 of these up and bead them, and then that way I'll have lots to practice on, and hopefully in the end I'm going to have two or more good pieces. So next up was to try and make the corners more crisp. In the past I used a tool something like this to form the edges when I bead rolled stuff. I tried using this. I tried using a smaller one like that. I tried it from the opposite side. Anyways, after a whole bunch of trial and error, what I actually found was a piece of angle iron here. And what I did with the angle iron is I softened the outside edges and I only left the inside edge here crisp. And then basically that is what I used and stuck around each corner and just basically gave it with a whack. So if you can see there, all these corners now are relatively crisp. Might have to touch a couple of them up, but that one's really good. That one's really good. So I'm going to clean the rest of these up. Now the next thing I got to do is figure out how to do this indentation. Where's the piece? To form this indentation. So my thoughts are to set up like a die or something and then pound it from the back. So make a piece of 1/8" metal that's shaped like this, clamp it down, and then get another piece of metal and then form it down in that pocket. So anyways, I'll show you what I think I'm going to do, and I'll show you if it works or not. So here's the next step, putting that indentation on the inside. So we need to make that little bump right there and then drill a hole into it. So first thing I got to do is make the bump. What I did to do that, I just took a piece of 1/8" plate or 1/8" sheet metal, whatever you want to call it. I made a little pattern, vice gripped it onto the sheet metal, laid it on the vise here. You can clamp it on the vise, probably make it easier. And then I had this piece of 1/2" stock. I softened the one edge and I kept the other edge sharp. And then what that allowed me to do was go in there and then just basically whack it with a hammer, and we've got that little depression. Pretty simple. First one was a little mucked up. You're looking at the last one here, but the other one's actually recovered, because when you beat it on the back like this is the side that's going to be up against the cab. So on the flip side, it's actually quite smooth, as you can see there. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to drill the holes, and then I'll use a little cone-shaped punch in order to countersink. I'll drill the holes, and then I'll push them back in, so that you've got that little dip into it. So there's the next step. It is a 1/4 inch hole on other end. Just drilled it on the drill press, and then came back over here to the stump. I had a piece of stainless, I think it's like 3/8 rod. I tapered the tip onto it, and after I drilled the holes, basically just gave it a whack. So now we've had like a chamfer on the inside of the holes, so that more resembles what we're trying to get at right here. The last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this, I'm going to trim the pieces off and do my best to make it look closer to that. And there's the end product after I trimmed them on the shear. I basically just took the original, put it on top of the blank, lined up the holes, and then used this marker. Trimmed off all the pieces, used a mini grinder to round off the edges here. Actually, I think they turned out really well. I would imagine we could probably use all 7 of them. I think that he needs 4. Anyways, gonna give them all to him. I guess there's one that goes on the right, one that goes on the left. Some trucks have dual wipers, have single wipers. So what I just told him, I'm gonna make them all blank, and then he can drill the wiper motor holes and the wire holes accordingly. Obviously, he's probably going to need some with the holes, some without, but I'll let him pick the best ones out. And I think mission accomplished on this one. We were able to make some replacement windshield wiper cover plates, I think is what they are. So this week, unfortunately, is one of those weeks where you have to go 2 steps back in order to go to a step forward. What I've done so far, you can see the front end of the Roadster is taken apart. We've got the headers off. We're going to take those back to the powder coater. They're going to re-sandblast them and refinish them. I've also taken the radiator off with the and the water pump, because the water pump is not good. It turns very freely. I wouldn't say that it's loose, but usually like a newer pump with a new seal wouldn't turn that easily. It would have a little bit of a sealing effect, I guess. So maybe it just dried out for all the time that it was sitting kind of on the engine stand and stuff. So the other thing that I wanted to do was, in these early Y blocks, they have a road draft tube right here on the side of the block. Now someone kind of made a plug up, a MacGyvered up plug. Right idea, just didn't seal very well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take that gasket and make a new one. Or I did buy a complete Y block gasket set, because I needed valve cover gaskets and I needed oil pan gasket for this motor. And it was, believe it or not, it was cheaper to buy a complete set than it was to go buy the 2 individual gaskets. So I'm hoping amongst all that stuff, I've got a brand new road draft tube gasket, which I can then use as a pattern to make a metal plate. And then for the water pump, same thing. I think there's going to be a new gasket come with a new water pump. On the back of the water pump, there's actually this little transfer tube. Kind of crusty. May look at replacing, well, actually there's some holes into it if I can see through it. So I'm going to have to drill this out, find another piece of steel tube, and make a repair to that, unless one of those comes with the replacement water pump. I'll find out tomorrow. And then the radiator, there's nothing wrong with the radiator, but one thing a couple of people asked me about was How come you're not painting it black? I'm one way or the other. I use most of the cars I build, I just leave them aluminum. I've also seen them painted black. Now the camera lady wants to see this painted black. A couple other people wondered why I didn't paint it black, because it will look better. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to clean the radiator up and we're going to paint it black too. Now I'm not sure how much we'll get of this back together again. I had to take the starter out too, by the way, in order to get the header out. But anyways, whatever comes in, whatever we can get back together again, we'll get it back together again on this episode. But like I said, it's one of those things where most things go well, no matter how well you plan them, and then sometimes they don't. So you've got to take 2 steps back in order to go another step forward. So anyway, follow along and we'll see how far we get with this. So there's the headers I took off. You can see all the places where the coating kind of flaked off. It's still, I can still flick most of it off with my finger. There's some places where it didn't come off at all, and there's other places where it just kind of came off like just tiny little specks. It just, there was dust everywhere. It was crazy. One thing I did do, I took advantage of the fact that I noticed a couple pinholes in the welds. I don't know if they were actually leaking or not, but since I'm going to get them recoated anyways, I dug them out, and there was 2 spots where I did that. I also was a little uncomfortable with how close one of the spark plug wires were to the exhaust, so I heated this area up and then knocked it in by about 3/16 of an inch or so, so it'll give me a little bit more clearance around the spark plug boot. So even though these were kind of brutal to get out, maybe there was, it's for all the better. Made a couple little tweaks to them, but still kind of sucks. I mean, but that's one of the things that happens. So anyways, we're going to take those out in the morning, hopefully get them back by the end of the week to get them repowder coated. It'll be a ceramic coat. And then, like I mentioned, as far as the water pump bracket right there, I do have another gasket. As far as the road draft tube gasket, there was another one in here, so we're golden. And then as far as like a tube goes, replacing that tube, it's 5/8 OD. I looked through my little collection here of sleeves in that, and lo and behold, I've got a 5/8 OD piece of tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that up, I'll drill that out, and then I'll weld that in place, and then that'll be the future tube, so we won't have to worry about that leaking. So we'll show you that in a few minutes. Success on making that little bracket. I did exactly like I described. Welded this 5/8 OD tube on the inside here. I pounded it through the hole, welded all the way around here, ground it flush, drilled it so that it's a 1/2 inch ID there, and then the plate, I just cut that out of a piece of 3/16 plate. Now the one thing, if you notice here, there's a very shiny surface here, a crosshatch and that. Whenever you have something like this, especially when you welded it or you want a nice good seal, if you've got a stationary belt sander or something that you can put this on, take a marker, take some Dicam, go ahead and mark the surface off with the marker, and then put it on the belt sander, and then basically make sure that the surface is nice and flat. It could be okay, and probably if you use some RTV silicone or something like that to gasket seal it and do that properly, you're still all right. But at the end of the day, if the surface is perfectly flat, the other one's perfectly flat, you even further reduce the chances of the area leaking. So now what I've got to do is I've got to go and get myself some Ford red paint to paint both of these, and then hopefully we will get them stuck back on the Y-block. So the new water pump from Rock Auto came in today. I taped it all off, and we got a couple coats of Ford red engine paint on it, along with the little, I think it's a water pump bypass valve, the one that I showed you earlier that I had to weld up. We got a couple coats of red paint on that. and then the block off plate. We've got a couple coats of paint on that. So not that exciting, but has to be done in order to get it back onto the Y block. Just going to let this set overnight, and then we'll go back to putting it back on the engine. Well, today we got the water pump put back on, the pulleys and whatnot. Basically didn't go through the step-by-step onto it, but took a razor, made sure that all surfaces were clean, used a little bit of RTV silicone on both sides of the gasket, put things on finger tight, waited 3 or 4 hours until the silicone set, and then actually gave everything a little another turn to tighten things up. I find that works the best. The block off port for the road draft tube is in place. When I did clean the surface off, I took off a little more paint than I planned, so I'm going to have to grab a little bit of red touch-up paint there and go in with a paintbrush to clean that up. But at least we've got 2 things kind of fixed on the motor. I've got the radiator out now. I'm kind of hoping to get a couple coats of black paint on that and get that back on, but we'll see how things go.
How do you want me?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Either way. Well, I tried to do a video of Elle's Coupe chassis coming in the yard. Pressed the wrong buttons and mucked it up. But anyways, Elle's Coupe chassis is back. We just finished putting the body on the frame. We still have a few things left to do on it. As I was saying previously, we've got to finish nailing the wood in. There's a few small things to do, like chop the garnish moldings and the windshield frame. But one of the things he wanted us to do was that once we got the body back, we're going to weld the firewall in and make the floor. So first step is to get the chassis back, get the body on it, and then we'll have something to do in the future. Those are not the wheels he's going to use on the front for everybody's going to pick up on it. He has 35 Ford style rims that are going to go on the front with smaller tires. He just needed something to roll the chassis around. That's why the Model A's are on there. So no, those are not the tires he's going to run. He has I think it's a 394 Buick, if I'm not mistaken, 2 4-barrels, fully rebuilt. And I think it's a 700 R4 transmission with an adapter onto it. If I'm not mistaken, that's what's in it, just for those who are wondering what it is. But anyways, Elle's Coupe chassis is back in the shop. So last night before I went in, I put a couple coats of high temperature black paint on the radiator after I cleaned it up a little bit. I mean, it's a brand new radiator. Really never saw much heat after only running it for a couple minutes. But nevertheless cleaned it all up. Put a couple coats of, actually I bought some engine enamel, thinking that's suitable enough for the radiator. Looks a lot better in black now. I think a couple people pointed out that, why don't you paint it black? Thought about it. Camera lady really likes it. The one thing we like about it is that there's less contrast now. When we put the grill shell back on, the black electric fan kind of blends in a lot more with the radiator versus before. We had the black fan on front of the silver kind of radiator, so just looks a lot better. Not going to perform a lot better, but definitely going to look a lot better. Have all the hoses hooked up. Everything is kind of almost back the way that it was before. The headers, we took them to the powder coater. They're stripping them and going to recoat them, so definitely not going to go back on this episode. And kind of inching back to where we were before, not quite there. So it's kind of, we're still kind of behind the build a little bit on a couple of the hiccups, but we're closing the gaps on all the little different things here. So that's it for another week of Coldstream Rod Shop. Kind of a 2 steps back and 1 step forward, or 1.5 step forward kind of a week, unfortunately, with the Camera Lady's Roadster. But like I said a couple times during the video, sometimes that happens. You got to go as far as you can, do all the things you think you've done right, And if something's broken or not working, well, you got to go backwards and fix it. That's just the way that it goes. What we're doing just at the end of this video, I'm actually getting the hood sides and the grill shell ready to paint on Friday night. So tonight is Wednesday night. You're going to see the video Thursday night. Friday night, we're going to paint the grill shell and the hood. Ever so tiniest of imperfections that we've got to fix up. This is the stuff that I typically use. In the old days, we would get the old squirt tube of lacquer-based spot putty or something to fix it up. But really, that's the only thing I have to do. There's some micro little notches here on the side of the grill shell. I'm going to fix up. Oop, my finger's dirty. We'll sand that off. One here and one there, and that's it. So not much to cover on that. We'll get that done. We'll get it painted on Friday night on next week's episode. Now on Ellie's coupe, I was saying earlier on that the engine was a 394. A 394 is an Oldsmobile. This is a 364 nailhead, and the transmission is a 700 R4. So all you guys out there with the sharp eyes, you're probably going to pick up on that. So I'm correcting myself here at the end of the video. But anyways, we've got Ellie's coupe body back on the chassis to do some more work on the firewall and the floor later on. Working away on the Camera Lady's Roadster. The 35 pickup bed, we'll work on that next week or the following week. But we're still got lots to do here. So anyways, that's it. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Come on back next week and see what we're up to. Everybody take care and have a great week.